Nice reaction.
I don't. What's that?
Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah, I didn't. Luckily, I got a lot of body fat. I'll probably make it through. No idea.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Town of Waukesha, 173rd Annual Town Meeting on Tuesday, April 21st, 2015, beginning at 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Madam Clerk, can we begin with the roll call, please?
Supervisor Durr?
Here.
Supervisor Fisher?
Here.
Chairman Marek?
Here.
Supervisor Radke?
Here.
Supervisor Wolf?
Here.
And move on to new officials' oath of office.
We'll start with Chairman Marek.
You want to go up here or? Are we on here?
Right hand.
I, John Marek, having been elected to the office of chairman, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God. Thank you.
Supervisor Wolf.
I, Larry Wolf, having been elected or appointed to the office of Supervisor 2, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God.
I, Brian Tom Fisher, having been elected to the office of Supervisor 4, swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God. Thank you. And we can move on to approve and dispense with the reading of the minutes from the 172nd annual meeting that was held on April 15th, 2014. Is there a motion?
I make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Got them both?
Ellen Schrader. Thanks.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move on to reports, and we'll begin with the auditor from Baker Tilly. We have John Kneppel. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me this evening. As Chairman Marek indicated, my name is John Kneppel, partner with Baker Tilly. You have hired our firm to conduct an audit of the town's books and records as of 2014. We issued our audit reports and other report in March of last month. I'm here to give you a brief summary of the results of that audit and the results of the year's financial activities. You should have a one-page handout. That's the summary that I'll go through this evening with you. However, I'll gladly answer any questions you have regarding the reports that we've issued or the audit process itself. Sure.
Just going to move you right over here so you can speak.
Sure. Very good. Beginning with the presentation, the handout, the objective when you hire a CPA firm is to audit your books and have them express an opinion on your financial statements. We have done so. That's contained in that document. There were two documents in blue covers that were issued as part of the audit. One, the financial statement, and then the other, our communication to those charged with governance and management, which would be the board. In the opinion that we've issued on your financial statements is considered an unmodified opinion. It's the highest level of assurance you can receive from your CPA. It is different from last year because last year we did have some qualifications on on the opinion of the 2013 report. However, all of those qualifications have been resolved, and therefore the opinion we are giving you this on the 2014 reports is unmodified or a clean audit opinion. It means your financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the accounting principles that you need to follow, and that's exactly what you want to hear from your auditors. The other document, before we get into some of the numbers, the communication to those charged with governance and management. This document covers all of the required communications we have to make under our professional standards to you as the board. As was done last year, and as such is very common with entities of your size, we did identify a number of material weaknesses in your controls. These are very common things that small governments have, segregation of duties issues. There's just not enough personnel to adequately segregate all of the duties amongst them. Having enough internal resources, training, experience, knowledge to do some of the things that the accounting standards require and the audit standards require audited entities to have in order to have no material weaknesses. It's just a resource issue, and it's very common for
for an entity of your size. Contains other communications within that document, all of which are forward-thinking recommendations that we've made to the board for your consideration. They're not problem issues. They're just things for your consideration to maybe make things a little bit more processes work a little bit better, et cetera. There are other things in there that we are required to communicate if we would have had problems during the course of the audit, disagreements, unusual things that occurred during the course of the audit, all of which is very boilerplate in that document. We did not have any such items that occurred during the audit. The audit went very well this year. We got full cooperation from staff, and from our perspective, very good audit. The whole process went very well, and that's all documented in that report. Getting into some of the financial highlights, then I won't go through each individual numbers, but just to say that the town maintains 4 individual funds. The general fund, which is your main operating fund, all the activity that goes forward. You created a new fund this year, the capital project fund, which you have set aside funds. They were moved out of the general fund, where they were in prior years. We moved them into a separate fund all by themselves, and they're set aside now for the capital needs of the town as the board determines their use. And then there's 2 smaller funds, the Act 102 fund, that's money that you get from the state for ambulance and fire purposes, and then the fire department donation fund, the activity you can see there. Focusing in on the general fund, you'll see there that the revenues, $3,130,000. The expenditures, $3,400,000. It looks like you dropped your fund balance by $300,000. Well, you actually did drop the general fund balance, but $800,000 of that was moved into the capital project fund. So it's just a movement out of the general fund into the capital project fund. So that might be a little bit more apparent on the next page when I talk about it. The fund balance section, that is the amount of money, the surplus funds that are being carried forward. This is what's been accumulated over all the years the town's been in existence. You're carrying forward these amounts of money into the 2015 year. $1.6 million for the general fund, $850,000 for the capital project fund, which was moved into there. There's a couple of other, and then the remaining balances, all of which are very common types of balances. Non-spendable money, prepaids. You buy things for next year before the end of the year, and you can't spend it again. That's why it's called non-spendable. And then the $30,000, which is assigned, that is set aside for a sewer lateral project that the town has set that money aside for. Any questions on the first page? If you flip it over, as part of our audit, we are looking at your budgetary compliance. You adopted a budget a year ago for 2014, or more than that, for the 2014 fiscal year. And this summarizes the activity for that budget. One comment I'll say is your budgetary compliance is a little different in 14 and 15 than it has been in prior years. In prior years, you adopted a budget for each individual account that contained activity, and that's a very onerous methodology of budgeting. Most communities in the state of Wisconsin don't budget line by line by line. They categorize groupings. They'll summarize it like it's presented on this particular page, where revenues are grouped by general source, expenditures are grouped by general function, and it allows, and this is a very common way of budgeting throughout the state. Most communities budget at a much higher level by source and function. There's detail underneath it to support those numbers, individual accounts, but the legal level of compliance with the budget is established at the higher level. It gives you more flexibility and doesn't require you to amend your budget constantly throughout the year, which is a very onerous process for many communities. Just running through some of the numbers, and I'll touch on the variance columns where the actual results to the final budget had some significant differences. Under the revenue side, the taxes were $58,000 higher than your budget. That's the result of an annexation payment that you received from the city of Waukesha during the year. Your regulation and compliance revenues are down under budget by $13,000. That's principally due to your permit revenues being lower than anticipated. The amount of permit activity that transpired during the year was pretty consistent with the previous year, but the average dollar amount of the permit was lower than the previous year. So the same number of permits, but just a lower value relating to each of the permits on average throughout the year created a lower number. Public charges for services, $51,000 over budget, or higher than anticipated. That's primarily all increase due to ambulance revenues that were generated during the current year. Getting into the expenditure side, every category produced a positive surplus. You were under your appropriations for the year. Public safety, primarily due to a open staff position for half a year in the fire department, and also because your permit revenues were lower, your contract payment to the inspector was lower because their payment is based upon the revenue collected. So there was a savings there. Public works, the $180,000 of savings there deals with lower contract plowing than anticipated during the year, and also less road maintenance. And then the capital outlay, the $117,000 savings there. There is some fire truck and equipment upgrades that just did not happen during the year. They were budgeted for, but those particular expenditures did not happen. So that resulted in a positive variance. And then under the other financing sources and uses areas, the transfer out, that's the $850,000 that was moved out of the general fund into its own fund now, the capital project fund that you'll use for capital projects of the town. And then the last thing, the general obligation debt issued. I mean, you may not think that you issued debt in the normal sense, but you signed an agreement with Waukesha County for a trunk radio service. And that's under the accounting standards, that's an obligation that gets recorded. You've committed yourself to making payments over a number of years to Waukesha County for that service. And so that shows up as an item here. With that, that's my presentation. Gladly take any questions that the board has, or if the audience has any, I will answer.
One
what I
quick
can.
clarification. Could you explain why there was a creation of a capital fund budget and that all those funds weren't commingled into the general fund any longer?
Well, the reason primarily is to not to lose track of the money in the general fund, that it just doesn't meld together with the funds that are really set aside for the operating activities of the town. And because you have specific plans for this money for capital needs, most communities will segregate that out of the general fund. They just don't combine it. They like to keep that separate. It just allows a greater flexibility to utilize the money and make sure that it's set aside and stays set aside for those purposes.
Thank you.
I have a couple of short questions. About how many communities do you represent?
Myself personally, or the firm? I personally work with almost 30
Okay.
different communities ranging from the size of the town of Waukesha all the way to Milwaukee County.
And
And-
of those, of just the 30,
Firm-wide, we're well into the hundreds.
And of the 30 or so that you work with, what percent of those use this budgeting format for adopting their budget?
Oh, you probably made it 100%.
Okay. And do you see that as a problem with transparency, or do other communities have problems with transparency when the budget is only presented at this higher level?
I don't, because it's public information. Somebody, anybody can come in and request that level, the detail behind
Okay.
that. It should be public information. And therefore, it's just a question of asking for it and you providing for it. Again, the state statute does not require you to budget at the account level, and nobody does it because it creates a very inflexible budget. Yes, you could argue that there's a greater transparency, but it also really limits the ability to manage what's going on throughout the year without coming back to the board every month and getting budget amendments processed for things that maybe you didn't account for in the budget process. I mean, that just happens. And so this is very common. I mean, like I said, you probably made my client list 100% following this level of detail.
And we have that level of detail available?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to make a statement that a level of detail has not been provided, and so we will continue to say that on the board, but the board does not provide detailed information, and that's why there's a question of transparency. Not on the website, not anywhere else. So although I agree certainly with Mr. Campbell on the process, the information needs to be available to the public. It's not.
On the website is the detailed budget, line by line.
It's not.
It is.
We provide the budget as stated with what was spent in the previous year, what was budgeted for the previous year, what was spent to date. Those details were combined in the budget that you provided us in the detailed budget in November, and we have yet to see the statement properly compiled to see what was spent in those categories. That's wrong.
But the line item budget is on the website.
But not in the format.
Well, maybe not in the format that you're looking for, but it is.
But let's not have a debate. You've made your comment, thank you. Let the woman finish her comment, and let's just go on with the meeting. Is there anything further?
Yes, information related to expenditures as part of the detailed budget is not presented anywhere on the public works. And I would appreciate in the future that all of that detail is available, not only in the budgetary format that we're proposing for the coming year, but also in what you spent for the this year. That information will never be released.
Comment noted. Anything further from you?
It's not my position to respond to that.
No,
'cause
no,
that's-
absolutely not. No,
But-
I'm not asking you to. Is there
Oh.
anything else in your presentation?
Not in no, I'm open to questions.
Can we look at page 26 of that, please? That's 26 different entries.
Yeah, gotta get to it here. Okay,
We present on that page, the schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, budget versus actual.
yes,
Can you show that the original budget was 3 million for revenues, 3 million for 163, and the final was the exact same number
no. Oh, for revenues, yes.
for revenues, and then you have a difference in expenditures by 38,609.
Correct.
But that is not the budget that was originally, the original number, your full original budget is not the budget that was adopted for 2014.
You're saying that that first column is not the original?
No, the original 2014 budget that was approved was $2,996,263. And so-
Based on the documents we received, that's
and I
what it is.
100%, and that's my point. Management recommendation letters were done to ensure that the information is correct, but this did not find out.
If you could provide me a copy of that document, I'd appreciate that.
line item budget approval, we never approve the line item. We've never done it. If we approve a higher level, we present and the top will run the response. But that's not the budget that was approved as far as going forward. So there's lots of information here tonight. We've been, certain things have been represented, and I believe you 100% that you were representing.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? Then we can move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Knipple.
Just so you know, if you might want to move this, we're just standing right under the heater.
The air conditioning is actually on. That's all you.
Somebody else is gonna get up and they're gonna roast.
Thank you. We can move on to the assessor's report from Tyler's Technology, and we have Marty Keeney here.
Thank you. I've included or presented a summary of the values here in the community. The assessed values in 2014 to the $1,000 level, residentials were assessed at $807,534, commercials at $53,956,000. Manufacturing is about $2,047,000. Then the other categories are much smaller for agricultural, undeveloped and agricultural forest, only $585,000 to $700,000. The agricultural other class assessed at $14,473,000. Altogether, the real estate in the town of Waukesha for 2014 was assessed at $879,881. Coupled with $8,778,000 of personal property gave us a value of $888,659,400. Comparing that for the Department of Revenue calculates what they call equalized value, which places all of the communities within a county, within the state on the same plateau. When they, on an annual basis, they take a look at sales, they take a look at new construction, properties that are given an exemption, properties that no longer are exempt, properties that are demolished. They calculate a value which puts everybody on the same par. So for example, WCTC is an entity that collects property tax, but they collect it not only from the town of Waukesha, all the other different communities. And if somebody's assessing at a different level, if you just fell back to that level of the assessment, there'd be unfair payments made by communities. If somebody assessed their values higher than somebody else, they would actually be paying more than their fair share. So putting them on that plateau, it's thought to be the market value of the town of Waukesha. And as we compare the values of the equalized value versus the real estate value, we're right around 97%, which the law says we should be within 10% of market value to be in compliance. So here within the town, because of the revaluation that we took place in 2012 and the addressing of the changes of the property, we're still at 97%, well within compliance. So things are doing well here in the town. Taking a look at sales, some sales activity from 2014 versus 2013, we're creeping up. We had 82 residential sales in 2012 for 2013. 2013 for 2014, we had 87 sales. So we had 5 more sales. So some more properties are starting to sell. There's some newer development that's out there. Hopefully we should start getting some more sales on that. So things are trending well here in the town of Waukesha. It's been always a pleasure to serve the people. Glad to talk to anybody if they have any concerns, any questions. We try to maintain regular hours here right now, every other Friday. That may be changing here, but always a couple times out of the month I'm available if you need to contact me. Otherwise, we're in the home stretch of trying to get values out. Probably anybody that's going to get changes in the real estate values for 2015 should probably experience or anticipate a notice next 4 to 6 weeks probably is when I'm gonna have them out to everybody so that we can have our board review and keep the process rolling. So thank you again. It's been a pleasure serving the town.
Any questions for Marty? And we can move on to Fire Chief Dan Buchholz. The best dressed man in the room.
I don't know about that. The fire department had a very normal year, I guess you would call it, if there's such a thing for a normal year. Fluctuation in personnel was pretty average. We did end up at 39 members at the end of the year. However, right at the beginning of January, we took on new members, so 39 isn't where we're at today, but we had a normal fluctuation. Our cadet program was 50% successful this year. One of the cadets that we had in 2014 has been taken on as an active member of the fire department. The other gentleman went on to college and left the department. And we did add a new cadet who's active as a cadet right now in 2014. Run volume was up for 2014 at 522 calls. That was about 18.5% increase over 2013. 348 of those were emergency medical calls, 60 vehicle accidents, and 114 fire emergencies. Mutual aid was given 51 times, and we received mutual aid 50 times. About 78% of our calls are EMS calls, and 22% are non-EMS calls, and about 30% of our EMS calls are advanced life support as opposed to basic life support. We still maintain 11 pieces of apparatus in the fire department. It's a very aging fleet. We have 6 of those pieces of apparatus that are 15 years old or older. So it is an aging fleet. As we presented earlier in November and September during the budget time, replacement of some of those vehicles, we're starting to get to the point where that's going to have to happen pretty soon. Some of those vehicles are going to cost more to repair than the resale value of those trucks will ever be. Fire prevention and fire inspections were completed as required by the Wisconsin Department of Safety and Professional Services. It's a new term for us. It used to fall under the Department of Commerce. As you know, Scott Walker got rid of the Department of Commerce and merged us into the Department of Safety and Professional Services. That's going to change in the near future as well, because we are under the impression we are now going to be merged into the Department of Finance. What emergency services has to do with finance, I'm not quite sure, except that we protect the money. I don't really know. But that's another change on its way in. Fire inspections were completed for both 6-month periods of 2014, which does make us eligible to pass our audit for 2014 and collect our 2% monies for 2015. We conducted several fire prevention programs in 2014. We probably reached out to about 2,000 children, grades preschool through 6th grade, about 650 adults from 7th grade through senior maturity. And all these programs are put on by about 30 volunteers throughout the fire department, many of those people serving more than once to accomplish the goals that we set forth. Our fire prevention open house was extremely successful this year. We recorded 1,110 attendees at this year's pancake breakfast and open house. We raised $4,697. Those funds were used to support I'm Responding communication software in the firehouse, materials for our live fire burn training. We replaced the worn flooring in the conference room and report room, and we're working on the security locks for the MS stock room. Projects that we have completed this year or are working on in the past year, we're looking at a change potentially in EMS. The state right now does support EMT intermediate, which is the level of care that we provide. It's an advanced life support level of care that we provide in our department. It's one step below paramedic level of care. When we got into the intermediate program, there were 28 departments in the state. We're down to 13 departments left in the state. National Registry no longer supports the intermediate program, so the testing for the intermediate program is now done strictly within the state of Wisconsin. We're looking for that level of care to probably not be supported by the state in the distant future. They have not said when that might occur, but it looks like that's the direction it's headed. We've already started research and planning to move to a paramedic level service as opposed to going back to a basic level of service. We're looking at varying options to provide that kind of service and the efficiency and effectiveness on the cost that would be involved in such a move. So we're in the planning stages of where we can go to the future. Our incident management system, our national incident management system has been maintained and continues to be maintained with new board members and new staff in the office. We've got training and opportunities that have to be achieved in those positions. The Waukesha County MABUS program has been extremely successful. We've continued to tweak our MABUS cards and our mutual aid system through the MABUS program, but it has worked very efficiently and very effectively for the county so far, and we're able to be good participants in that. The 800 radio trunk system, which has been delayed, it was supposed to go into effect in the last quarter of 2014, is still in the delay mode based on a number of things that have not come together real quickly. The biggest thing is acquisition of two tower sites, one in the town of Vernon and one in the town of Lisbon. Both of those have just been recently acquired. They are hoping to have construction start at those sites very soon. Once those are up and running, the infrastructure is ready in many cases to be moved into the tower sites. We are still hoping that late in the third quarter or the early part of the fourth quarter of this year, we'll be going live with the new digital radio system. Our Intergraph mobile CAD system was completed in 5 of our vehicles in 2014. This actually brings the dispatch, mapping, and information right into our system, similar to the Sheriff's Department has had for years in their squad cars. We now have in our frontline engines and our ambulances. And likewise, we've been improving and tweaking FieldBridge, which is our EMS reporting system. All of our EMS runs are reported to the state through FieldBridge. That system has been tweaked and modified, and we're looking at an upgrade in that coming probably in 2016. The department continues to pursue other projects and improve on projects. Members of the department are extremely active in providing quality service to the town of Waukesha and the visitors to the town of Waukesha, and that characteristic will continue into the future. There's a group of very dedicated people that put in a lot of time for this community. We owe them a great amount of thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Buchholz?
I got a quick question, if we may. Chief, can you tell us with the digital radio equipment, the pieces and parts components that we are purchasing at the town of Waukesha, what's the current status of the ordering and acquisition delivery of those components?
All of our mobile and handheld radio equipment has been purchased. It's been delivered. It's at the radio tower waiting programming. The only portions that are not complete yet, we have not obviously done installation yet. Programming is not done yet, so we haven't received those charges yet. And then there'll be the incidental costs of wiring and antennas and things like that go into the installation process. But the hard materials, the radios themselves, have been purchased and have been delivered. They're at the radio tower now, waiting programming.
Any other questions? Yes.
What is our average response time for 2014, and what is our goal?
85% of the time, we are between 8 and 12-minute response times. In a department like ours, paid on call, non-staff department, we should be making run responses in less than 14 minutes. About 88% of the time, we are below 12 minutes. And this is off the top of my head right now because I didn't bring those numbers in here, but about 98% of the time, we are less than 14 minutes. So we're well within what we're required to meet. 14 minutes. That's an NFPA standard.
Thank you. Anything else for Chief? And we can move on to Deputy Thompson with the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Last year, we responded to a grand total of 933 calls for service. 102 of those calls were pertaining to 911 calls that were dispatched either as 911 hang-up, 911 open lines, or 911 no causes. It's a decrease from 911 calls taken in 2013, in which 131 calls were taken. 133 calls were taken to assist the town of Waukesha Fire Department, either for medical calls or fire calls. Deputy Nate Fransky, who was my relief partner, as well as myself, issued 562 traffic citations, which is a 19.8% increase from 2013 and a 49.5% increase from 2012. Along with that, 77 written warnings and 194 verbal warnings were issued. 15 parking citations were also issued. The majority of those are issued when there are snow conditions on the roads in which snow plows are not able to complete finishing the roads due to parked vehicles on the roadway. In addition to traffic-related citations, 59 ordinance citations were issued, which is over double the 23 issued in 2013. 80 total crashes were reported in 2014. Again, this is only town of Waukesha stats for our contract deputy, which is during second shift only. So it does not include first or third shift crashes. 40 of the crashes involved property damage only, which is a 33.3% decrease from 2013. 22 of the crashes involved some type of injury. There was also 2 fatality crashes. First occurring on Merrill Hills Road near the cross street of Came Terrace, and the second occurred on River Road just south of Foxvale Court. Both of these fatal crashes involved single vehicle and single occupant incidents. 14 of those 80 crashes also involved some type of animal, whether it's a deer or a raccoon or anything else like that. 4 crashes were also reported as hit and run crashes. Again, for second shift deputies, there were 7 OWI arrests last year. 21 drivers were issued citations for operating while suspended or operating after revocation. And 83 incidents were reported as other traffic offenses, which we usually attribute to attempting to locate a possible drunk driver, reckless driver, or traffic hazard calls. 27 calls for service were dispatched related to some type of animal case. These calls were a pretty steady volume throughout the year. 82 property crimes were reported in the town of Waukesha in 2014. 6 incidents involved a burglary, 8 involved criminal damage to property, 24 involved fraud, 34 involved theft, and 7 involved trespassing. In addition, there was 3 incidents involving motor vehicle theft. There were 17 domestic incidents which occurred in 2014, which is an increase from 13 in 2013. 1 call also resulted in a child abuse investigation, and 8 calls resulted in a battery. In addition, there was 1 incident which was handled on second shift again, which resulted in a fatal heroin overdose in early 2014. After further investigation through several months by our detective bureau and our sheriff's department, the suspect was taken into custody and is currently charged with first-degree reckless homicide by delivering drugs. Again, I'm the primary deputy for 2015, and Deputy Fransky is my relief partner, which is going to continue throughout the year. In addition to what our squad has incorporated with the town, our sheriff's department has noted a substantial increase in opiate use, such as pain medication, heroin use throughout the county, especially an increase with juvenile use. We've had substantially younger teenagers becoming involved with these types of drugs, which has resulted in all deputies being trained in the use of Narcan, which is a drug that helps saving lives towards opiate uses. And all squads are outfitted with Narcan. We also began the implementation of automatic license plate readers. There are currently, I believe, 5 in the county. One is in the Southeast District, which is located out of the town of Vernon substation. This has led to a substantial increase in the recovery of stolen or missing vehicles, as well as a substantial increase in the apprehension of wanted individuals. It's even assisted us in closing investigations related to burglaries, an armed robbery that occurred last year, and drug transactions. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Deputy Thompson? I have one. What is an automatic license plate reader? Does that mean everything your car comes in front of?
Yeah, it reads speed limit signs and everything too, unfortunately. So it's not that technologically advanced, but yes, it reads license plates.
And if it's is it cars coming at you, cars you're following, or all of the above?
Just usually running with us or against us. It doesn't return anything unless there is what we call a hit, such as a wanted subject or a stolen car or a highly expired registration.
Teenage girls with speeding tickets?
No, that won't show up.
Curious. Any other questions? Thank you, Deputy. And we can move on to the clerk treasurer's report.
Good evening. It's 2014's been a year of change in the office, not only with a new clerk treasurer, but we also have a new deputy treasurer that allowed us to no longer use an outside accounting firm. We purchased Workhorse software to process our accounts payable, receivables, receipts, and payroll. And we started a new town website. We changed it to help benefit the residents, make it easier to use. We've noticed a reduction in time to put the packets together and get information out. Aaron, Deputy Clerk Aaron, did a great job setting it up initially, but all of us in the office are able to make changes to it. It's very user-friendly, so we can make a change on the fly. I had a resident call me a couple days ago and asked if something could be put up, and I was able to put it up in probably a 5-minute time. So it doesn't take the time it used to take to use the old state site. We've had the office has been focusing on being more accessible to the residents. We've increased our office hours by opening up early in the morning and staying open in the evening on town board evenings. In addition, we put in the new sound system that you're all listening to tonight. We also put up a video system, which allows people to stay at home and watch our meetings live, as well as being captured for future review. We have put in a backup system also, so if something goes wrong with the network or our connection to the live stream, that we have the ability to go and upload the next morning, so the data is secured. We collected back taxes, as mentioned in the audit, from the city. That hasn't been done since April of 2014, or 2004, when the law was enacted. We also collected grant money from the Help America Vote Act before it expired. I'd like to thank my office staff, our two deputy clerk treasurers, Erin and Joan, for the ladies have brought individual strengths to the office, and has embraced all the changes throughout 2014. Our poll workers did a great job. We had 3 elections in 2014 that I was here for, one prior. We continue to accept applications for residents. If any of you are interested in becoming a poll worker, please let me know. And I want to congratulate the three, Chairman Marek, Supervisor Fisher, and Supervisor Wolf on their reelection. We are looking to have a special election in 2015 due to Senator Farrell being sworn in today as county executive. And with that, we will be using photo ID for the first time. So please remind your neighbors and your family to be prepared for photo ID for the next upcoming election.
Thank you. Any questions for the clerk? How about the treasurer? Seeing none, we can move on to 6. Comments from Chairman John Marek. It's been my honor and my privilege to serve as the chairman for the town of Waukesha for the last 2 years, and I look forward to the next 2 years. I'd like to update you on several issues that have been ongoing issues in the town of Waukesha for some time. The Great Lakes diversion application for the city of Waukesha is moving ahead and likely head to the other states for approval later this year. The city has a high degree of confidence in the application's success, and we should all be supporting the city's bid for Lake Michigan water and not attempting to delay or malign the application as past boards have done. There will be no need for the city to threaten our water supply if they are successful in their bid. The town of Brookfield incorporation issue. Our attorneys from the firm of Macy Moulter Riffle Larson is in fact representing the town on this matter in our continued opposition. The Department of Administration and Corporation Review Board will be holding a public hearing on this matter later in the coming months. In 2013, Supervisor Fisher and I asked our legislators, Representatives Craig, then Representative Kramer, and Senator Lozick, to fast track a bill through the state legislature to protect the town's land. They did so, and on July 5th, 2013, Governor Walker signed that bill, which limits the ability for towns to acquire land in the fashion that is attempted by the town of Brookfield. Our attorney's position is that the IRB must send this back to the circuit court for dismissal, as the current law requires that both municipalities must agree to the attachment of land. The town of Waukesha has, by action taken by this board, by resolution, condemned the attachment, and therefore the incorporation petition does not meet the minimum requirements for the incorporation. Attorney Macy, do you want to weigh in on this at all?
Certainly. Apparently that I've been alerted by the chairman and others that some town residents or residents have alleged that I was alerted to a fact that a town resident or residents have alleged that the representation by my firm of both the town and the city of Brookfield and perhaps the village of Sussex as well presents a conflict of interest. This allegation is false and without any basis. First, both the city and town have stated in no uncertain terms that they are imposed entirely to the incorporation of the town of Brookfield. The interests are totally aligned. Secondly, both the city and town have stated in no uncertain terms that they will not negotiate with the town of Brookfield in any way relating to the incorporation of the town of Brookfield. Again, the interests are totally aligned. Third, the town has adopted not one, but 2 resolutions indicating they will not approve of the incorporation, as you've stated, Mr. Chairman, thus ensuring defeat of the incorporation pursuant to 66.0203, parent 4M of the Wisconsin statutes. The city of Brookfield is on record in circuit court wholeheartedly supporting the town's resolutions in this regard. Finally, there's been a very specific question raised by the subject residents. They've alleged a conflict because the city adopted a, quote, resolution indicating willingness to annex, end quote, the lands that are included in the incorporation petition, including, of course, those lands in the town of Waukesha. And that's under section 66.0203, parent 6 of the Wisconsin statute. The argument, evidently, is that the city stands ready to annex the town of Waukesha lands. This is false. The residents obviously have no understanding whatsoever of the purpose of the statute and the city's purpose behind adopting the resolution of willingness. The adoption of the resolution has absolutely nothing to do with the city annexation of the town's land. Indeed, there is no mechanism that would result in the town of Brookfield annexing these lands from the town of Waukesha by adopting the resolution. The purpose behind 66.0203 Parent 6 of the Wisconsin statutes is solely to require the Incorporation Review Board to make a specific comparison under section 66.0207. In addition to many standards required for approval of an incorporation petition, when a resolution of willingness to annex, a resolution of willingness to annex is adopted by a neighboring city, the IRB must compare the level of government services desired or needed by the residents of the territory compared to the level of services offered by the proposed, level of service offered by the proposed village, and the level available from a contiguous municipality which files a certified copy of a resolution of willingness to annex. The city of Brookfield adopted the resolution so that it could argue that it can provide better levels of service. One more reason for the IRB to deny the annexation position. Nothing more, nothing less. The city is on record for statements of the mayor that has no desire, interest, or willingness to annex lands from the town of Waukesha. The city, like the town, will do everything it can to defeat this incorporation effort. There is no conflict. So, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any questions, I can answer it more. I can't go into a lot more detail. There's a purpose for the law. The city of Brookfield adopted the resolution for that purpose, and it assists you to have that resolution on file.
Thank you. Moving on to town sewer and septic. I am pleased to announce that the town hall is now connected to the city sewer system. This permanent solution allows for future expansion also. The pipe that was sized is a 4-inch pipe and will accommodate a fixture count of 216. We currently in the town hall, the fire department, and DPW have a fixture count of 79.5. That's less than 40% of the pipe's capacity and will allow for expansion if we so deem necessary in the future. There are a great many positives to report in the town of Waukesha over the past 2 years, and I'd like to highlight just a few of them. Overall spending in the 2015 budget is down 7% over 2014. Spending on attorneys since I was sworn in 2 years ago is down 75%. Supervisor Durnay negotiated a contract with our waste hauler. The fee you pay for waste collection is down 25% and will save the town over $1.5 million over the course of the life of that contract. The town portion of your real estate taxes is down 4.8% this year. That is in addition to any real estate reduction you may have received from the state and or WCTC taxes. Through sound fiscal management in just 2 years, this board has added $806,000 to the general fund, bringing the total general fund balance to nearly $2.5 million. Portions of those funds will be spent for radio upgrade for ambulance or all of the fire and EMS equipment. And we look forward to purchasing additional DPW trucks as well as new vehicles for the fire department that are needed. We now communicate with and participate in projects with our municipal neighbors. This board embraces forward progress, smart development, rather than fighting with the developers and pushing them to annex their land to other communities. Never again will a high-quality development like Walgreens and Aldi's be chased out of town. To the light of most of the vast majority of town residents, our cyber supervising is a distant memory, as are the near constant negative headlines in the newspaper. Our books are open for all to see. Our budget and the expenditures are published on the town's website and have been. As per our auditor's advice, Supervisor Fisher is taking the lead on developing capital funds budget expenditures so that we have a roadmap moving forward to ensure the needs of the DPW and the fire department are being met and our tax dollars are wisely allocated. Our town clerk treasurer has been with us for just over a year and is performing admirably as expected and according to all applicable laws and ordinances. The last 3 elections in just over a year have gone off flawlessly. To set the record straight, our clerk does not have access to the state voter registration system, has never had access during her tenure here, and has never altered it. It is unfortunate that a few voices who maligned and painted Kathy in a bad light in an attempt to impugn her reputation in order to gain political points, primarily against me, while they knew full well of the real truth of her outstanding service. I applaud her late nights, the early mornings, and the time she spends in the town serving all of us. She is deserving of our gratitude and our appreciation. Lastly, I appreciate the faith that my supporters have put in me and this board. For those of you who oppose the policies, I invite you to a listening session on April 30th from 3 to 6 p.m. We can speak one-on-one or in a group session. Thank you. And we can move on to citizens' comments. Anyone?
Angie Van Sock, South 51, West 25375, Glendale Road. I will ask again to see the detailed budget that includes all of the public works expenditures. I have screened and reviewed and asked. I still haven't seen it or gotten it. You can say it 100 times, but it hasn't been given to us. The Great Lakes water is going to the other states at the end of the year. That's really news to a lot of people. Certainly not what's been in the headlines. And just to be clear, we never opposed the Great Lakes application, John. And I know you've said that several times. We opposed inclusion of the town because we wanted to enhance the application. We wanted it to succeed. It's important for us all that it does succeed. Otherwise, we will have problems, and that's why the limitation was put in place, which certain members of the town board are well aware. The legislation that you talk about, that was fast-tracked in 2013, was started by the previous board in 2012, and was led by Mr. Fisher. Why that wasn't brought forward faster, people can check the records on that. But it's not as though we weren't working on a three-prong approach in order to protect the town of Waukesha at that time. It is very important that that is in place, and I'm glad that it is. Mr. Macy's indicated that perhaps some of us don't understand how the town of Brookfield Incorporation works. It's far from the truth. But what I find most interesting in his comment is that he is saying that he is ensuring defeat. And I think Mr. Hammes would be very interested in that because he's already declared that he plans to fight the legislation. So I don't think any of us can ensure defeat. We certainly hope that the town of Brookfield is defeated. I think that's very important. But to say that we are ensuring defeat, it must be this is the words that you just used. I wrote down that it ensures defeat. So we can check the tape, but I was surprised to hear you say it. But certainly if I'm wrong, I'd be happy to address it. Spending is down. Apparently nobody's interested, right? Some people are interested. Yeah. Pardon me? I mean, some of the statements, Mr. Marek, are just not true. And it's hard for those of us that have been here a long time and understand how the budget works and understand how the financials go, to listen to you say things that simply don't meet with the facts. And you've been elected, and I respect the fact that you've been elected, but I certainly hope the information that has come to you in the last 2 years you will utilize, even those voices that might not agree with you, because we do have the best interest of the town of Waukesha at heart. That's the bottom line. And we prefer to work proactively and cooperatively with this board as much as possible. Thank you.
Anybody else for citizens' comments? Going once? Going twice? Then we can move on to set the town of Waukesha's 174th annual meeting date. Is there a motion? It's on April 19, 2016.
Also move.
Is there a second?
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That is set. And set the date for the 2014-2015 public hearing to present the proposed 2016 budget of Tuesday, November 10th, 2015 at 7 p.m. Is there a motion? Larry? And a second?
Again? Like second again?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And a motion for adjournment. And a second. In the back, that was Mrs. Durr. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
8:03.